Thanks for joining us today on the School Transportation Nation podcast. This episode is brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing software. And our tech tip this week is brought to you by Zonar, leader in smart fleet management. I am Tony Corcoran, publisher of School Transportation News.
And I'm Ryan Gray, editor-in-chief of School Transportation News. Later on, we have a special guest, Cain Smith, Director of Transportation for Cypress Fairbanks ISD in the Houston area. You'll be hearing directly from the front lines as he shares what he's dealing with as the district prepares for the 2021 school year.
Excellent, Ryan. Looking forward to hearing from Cain. We also have a special surprise guest, Mr. Antonio Civitella, on the podcast today as well. So we'll hear about what's going on with TransFinder. So Ryan, want to jump into a few questions with you. Transportation directors certainly have their work cut out for them coming into the new startup. What's going on? Give us some insights.
Well, as we all know, states are starting to reopen slowly but surely, some faster than others. There still is much consternation, many unknowns, many anxieties, frustrations about how are we going to get school going again with students in classes and school buses rolling. Obviously, districts and bus companies need a lot of guidance before that happens. We're not seeing a lot of details just yet, but certainly states are working on them. Maryland released some initial guidance on the school side, some on special needs. California is working on that, hopefully for a release in June. Many other states are following suit. What we did see this past week was the CDC issued a flow chart that was designed to help district administrators make decisions. No school busing was mentioned, of course, but the flow chart started with a heading that said, should you consider reopening? And CDC lists 3 scenarios, and all 3 a school district should answer yes, according to the CDC, before they can proceed to the next step. Those questions are, will reopening be consistent with applicable state and local orders? Is the school ready to protect children and employees who are at higher risk for severe illnesses? And the kicker is, are you able to screen students and employees upon arrival for symptoms and history of exposure? So we're talking about tracing, what we had our guest Ryan Hahn a couple weeks ago talk about. We're talking about scanning kids, not only to get them into school, but what is the school bus? It's an extension of the classroom, right? Extension of the school building. So before the kids can even get on the school bus, what are transportation professionals supposed to do with these kids? How can they clear them to get them on the bus? So we've talked a little bit about this over the last several weeks, and still not much clarity on how this is going to happen. We have heard anecdotally from some school bus drivers on our Facebook page who have seen some of our stories that we're talking about scenario planning, different districts across the nation. And they're like, wait a second, so we need to do this as well? That I'm not going to do that. That's not in my job description. I'm not a medical expert. So there's a lot that districts need to chew upon right now and figure out, how do we incorporate our nurses, our health resources to do this? What does a school bus stop look like? There's a lot that still needs to be figured out. And keep in mind, the CDC recommendation is just that. It's a recommendation. The states are going to come up with their own plans. Certainly, they'll probably be looking at what CDC has issued. Now, this is a very short document, not a lot of detail in it, but you can go ahead and check that out on the CDC website. We'll get that up on our STN Online site as well. We should have a story coming out on that and share that on social media. So that will provide a little bit more clarity amidst the fog. But, that really comes back to school districts still scenario planning, making calculations on what is the reduction to passengers on the school bus to maintain physical distancing. We did a survey of readers recently, and we asked them some of these questions. And really the responses are running the gamut. Have seen 84 passenger buses, with one respondent saying, we can get 24 to 26 kids on that bus. Another respondent will answer same passenger capacity. Oh, we can only do 15 kids on buses. And certainly that's going to change over all the different OEM models that are out there. And is it a flat floor bus? Is it not? On and on. So there is still so much that needs to be figured out. And one positive note in this that we saw this past week was NAPT, NASDIPS, and NSTA announced that they formed the STARTS task force to start delivering the guidance. It's going to be basically 3 subcommittees that are working on everything from school bus routing to student safety and employee safety. So that work is starting up this week. No real timetable on when we're going to see some results on that, but we know that the industry is galvanizing to try and provide some guidance. And really the big goal of this is to draw from the industry expertise to provide proper guidance to legislators and school administrations so that they're just not, walking up in front of the camera and starting to espouse half-baked ideas. We want the transportation professionals to really drive what's possible and what are some of the costs involved. Unfortunately, it does come down to money. If you're talking about reducing passenger capacity, you're talking that means you're talking about increasing school bus sizes, the sizes of fleets. Who has the money for that? The driver shortage already being what it is, and we don't know what drivers are going to be returning in the quote unquote fall or whenever school resumes. What does that look like? So I know Cain Smith will have some really interesting insights into this later in our program. But that's in a nutshell, the hot off the presses stuff, Tony.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know I've been talking to a lot of directors myself about what they're doing. Are they going to the office? Are they working from home? Is it a blend? What's that all look like? And I know we sent out a survey, had over 1,000 respondents. And the results are very interesting. About 34%, 364 said they're still going in the office. They're working from the office. So transportation, the lights are on, people are working. 21% said working from home, about 230. And then we had about 40% said it's a mix of both. They're going to the office and they're working from home. That was about 419. And I'm not currently working at all. That's 4.4%, about 47 people. So, man, it sounds like transportation, they're still working. Even though the schools may be closed, transportation is not closed. If you look at a cumulative, that's about 780 roughly of the respondents. So, wow, I'm more than 78% roughly are working. So that's that at least from the office in some capacity. Very interesting data. I'm really curious, what all that preparation looks like. Ryan, what are some of the other things you see in terms of what's going on out there? Recommendations, things like that.
Hopefully this task force will deliver a lot of those items. I know states are working on some of these things, a lot still unknown. And we're still trying to get some school bus drivers paid and working, especially on the contractor side. One thing that we do know, Tony, is sanitizing school buses. We're starting to see some more direction from that. We've seen some OEMs issue some best practices. Can you share a little bit more on what Zonar Systems is doing?
Yeah, no problem. This tech tip is brought to you by Zonar, a leader in smart fleet management. School buses are still working, delivering food, essential services throughout their community. Use Zonar's patented EVIR inspection system, that's EVIR, to standardize sanitation and establish best practices for drivers to follow. Additionally, review inspection records online on one dashboard to make sure each step is done and every bus is sanitized. Our communities depend on our school buses. Let's keep them clean and our drivers safe. Learn more at zonarsystems.com/restart. That's zonarsystems.com/restart. Ryan, there's still a lot to talk about where we're going to head. When do you think school busing will return? The fall, maybe?
Let me look into my crystal ball. Ultimately, really, the folks that I've talked to, the decision on when school busing returns is going to come from the parents. Obviously, a lot will be driven by school administrations. And then, like we were talking about, they're trying to figure out next steps and scenario planning and whatnot. But being the father of a 5-year-old girl, we've been pretty lucky. She's still in transitional kindergarten at a private preschool, so we haven't hit the public school system yet. But we had a few weeks there of trying to distance learn and still be doing our jobs. My wife works full time. I'm obviously working full time, and having our daughter at the house and keeping her engaged, and not just on kids' YouTube or watching TV or just playing, trying to keep her motivated and learning and on task is extremely difficult. Tony, I know you're in the same boat with your 2 daughters, and countless number of our listeners are also dealing with this. So much has been written about in the nation's press and talked about on TV about the frustrations that parents are having. Let's face it, those of us who are not teachers, that's for a reason, right? I've always known that one of my shortcomings is being a teacher. I try to do the best I can to impart some of my limited wisdom on how to write articles and tell stories. That's what I do best. But when it comes to teaching people, that's a whole different skill set. And that's why teachers go to school for this and they get certifications. So with so many parents nationwide feeling like they're a babysitter, and granted, that's part of the job of being a parent, but we never thought that we would be doing that at home for our kids learning, at least those of us who decided that we're not going to homeschool. So really, that's going to come back to the parents really demanding school bus service. And we know that a lot of folks nationwide are getting pretty restless already with the stay-at-home orders. We're seeing some pretty outrageous things going on in Michigan, storming the state capitol. We've seen protests even here on the beaches in Southern California, and this is spreading all over the nation. And what we know is with e-learning, it's been a success, limited standpoint in some places, but others, they would call it an outright failure. And granted, to be fair, school districts had little time to transition from the traditional classrooms to online models. And there's a lot of money coming from the feds that is going to be going to states that can funnel down to school districts to build up their online learning infrastructure. So certainly there will be lessons learned going forward. And I've talked about this in past podcasts where I really think, if I can read the tea leaves, that we're going to see some element of online learning continue. But of course, everyone's really hoping that we can get kids back into the classroom, because there's no substitute for that person-to-person, face-to-face learning. Still, we need to figure out how we can do that better. I was talking to someone earlier today in the south side of Chicago, economically disadvantaged area. There has been some stats coming out of the local papers there that only 20 to 30% of these students are actually logging in to their remote learning opportunities through their districts. And if they even have any internet service or reliable internet service. So parents need to get back to work. They want their children, for the most part, to be going to school. We know it's best for them, for their continuity. This is especially important for students with special needs. So really think that parents will need to be the ones that are driving when school busing starts again. This is something that the American School Bus Council is really focused on right now. They're working on a PR campaign, something that they actually started discussing pre-COVID-19. They're trying to drive awareness to the yellow school bus. And the original vision that they started looking at is certainly evolving. But what they're looking at doing is developing a set of PSAs that encourage school bus ridership, that address the convenience factor of school busing for these parents, these very parents that want to return to their own semblance of normalcy, who need to return to work eventually. So that's going to be a key to this. So we'll hopefully see more on this soon. These PSAs are also going to be encouraging new school bus driver applicants. So I know Cain will talk in a minute about some of the shortages he's seeing, and that this is different than 2008. So it's important to get this message out, and that school busing is here, it's evolving, but it's still a vital service for millions and millions of kids and their parents every day. So that's where I really see those decisions coming from.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan, I know as a parent myself, as you mentioned, I have two girls. I have a 5.5-year-old kindergartner and a 2.5-year-old that loves to be a distraction at home to the 5.5-year-old. And I mean, my little girl, she's struggling, man. She's like, is my life ever going to go back to normal? I miss my friends. When you're in kindergarten, you thrive on building those social interactions that, with other children and being a part of that kind of visual learning experience and, doing, a Zoom meeting every day plus a small group Zoom meeting for her. I can tell you that not every parent can sit there with their child and manage them. My wife is doing her best, and she's struggling too. She's stressing out. Is she doing a good job supporting our little girl during this time? And there's just a lot of stresses that parents are facing. So, I mean, I totally agree with you that parents are going to really help drive and push for school to reopen in the fall and school busing. And, is the e-learning working for my kindergartner? I would say on a very limited basis. She's not falling behind. We're doing our best to keep pushing her forward, but not everyone has the luxury to do that. If you're an essential worker or you need to be back at work, who's going to manage your kids? How are you going to do that? What's that look like? I mean, every parent in the United States is probably asking that question, and that's a huge dilemma that's going to face parents, where they have to meet their financial responsibilities, but they don't want to also leave their kids who are their number one priority, right? You're going to feel very conflicted as a parent. So those are big challenges. And I think that we're definitely going to be looking deep and hard as an industry as we progress forward into the fall. And there's just really a lot of tension that's occurring there. And people are running all these what if scenarios, right? And in the end, it comes down to what is the best fit. There is no perfect scenario. Everything's going to work a little different. And I'm sure our guest, Cain Smith, is going to talk a lot about some of the scenarios that they're facing down in Cypress Fairbanks and Houston and what they see. And they're a huge campus with a lot of kids and a lot of buses. So they're trying to tackle a big one with that. A lot of smart people, a lot of communication and collaboration going to be happening, I'm sure. And I recommend that to all the districts that are our listeners here in the School Transportation Nation. Be sure and collaborate with your administrators. Tell them what's possible. Don't let them, try to create a scenario for you that is impossible. Be sure you're in the middle of that conversation and injecting what you can do. Kind of like what our guest was saying last week, David Horsager. I loved his analogy. It was like, you're on the beach, you've been training, but when they drop you into the battle zone and you're taking live fire, things are out the window, right? The great saying, hey, you have a great plan until you get punched in the face, right? And this is about the biggest punch in the face that I've ever seen to the market. I think everybody's got to realize that the old plan's kind of out the window, and you gotta think on your feet and be adaptive and thoughtful. We've got a great guest coming up. I got CEO Tony Civitella from TransFinder going to share a little bit about what's going on with them. Tony, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Tony. Thank you for having us here. It's exciting.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. I've been seeing you guys everywhere. TransFinder is quite busy these days between webinars and podcasts and all the things you got going on. I heard a rumor that you guys maybe were extending your Stop Finder communication app offer. What's the latest on that? Can you fill me in?
Well, Tony, this has really been such a great product. We released this in just the right timing. We released this about a year ago. It's really meant to just keep everyone up to date and a lot of our clients are using this product to communicate with parents, and even some of our clients are even communicating with each other, with the staff. But now we offer this on March 14th, when really we thought like, oh my goodness, this is the right time to use this product. So we offer this for at no cost to all of our clients. And really, you don't have to be our client. Anyone could have this product at at no cost. But we extended it. We realized, boy, clearly no one's going back to school at this moment, but they're going to need a product, a communication tool, starting the beginning of the year in the school year. So we're going to offer this product at no cost right through December 31st, because now is the time that our clients, and really you don't have to be a client, to really make sure that you communicate precisely of everything's going on with parents. Remember, these are our clients' clients, are parents, and this is really going to be important time, how we communicate and how they react, because parents are going to be ultra sensitive on what's going on. And I think this product is going to be a huge part of their operations.
Oh, wonderful. That's great stuff. And, how's the new product, the Route Finder Plus? Lots of customers reaching out, taking advantage of maybe that our podcast offer. Hopefully you're getting emails. We want lots of donations for our charity. What's going on there with the new product?
Tony, I knew you were going to ask me about that. So we've had record amount of inbound emails that people can't understand, like, what's going on? Well, I think you guys are doing an amazing job. I love what you're doing. This podcast it's full of resources and information. So thank you for doing this. But yeah, we're getting record amount of inbound emails saying we're interested. And so like, holy cow, if you asked me 3 months ago, even before this COVID-19 crisis, how would it be in the middle of May? It would be a normal year. I think we had a great momentum, but my goodness, things have changed so much. We released our product in really the right time. It was in the middle of really the beginning of April. It was after a few years of development, and it just came at the right time. Tony, at this point, we have so many of our clients know the benefit. They see the benefit. So there's so many of them are just want to move forward, that we're at a certain point that we can't take any more clients and actually tell them, how can you take this product at this given time to be up and running for the fall? So amazing things going on. Really, I tell the company almost on a daily basis, we're grateful for our clients. We're grateful for this industry. So many smart people, so many leaders are just popping up everywhere. And we pinch ourselves every other day.
That's great. That's great. Tony, you got any other special products you might not be telling us about? Like anything like you could release it just on this podcast just between us two.
Yeah, just between us, don't tell anybody. Well, Stop Finder clearly is a great communication tool, but it's also a great tool for finding out, where is this bus? How far is the bus? And you want to track the bus. A lot of our clients really want that. So we're rebranding it to be geo alerts. So it really means geographic alerts. We want our parents to really use this app to find out, or how far is the bus from my stop? And really, not how far is it from my stop or my kid's stop, but when did it leave the bus garage? When did it get to the school? So we want our parents to really to be alerted geographically. So we're rebranding it a little bit to call it Geo Alerts, which means geographic alerts. Again, we want to just have that geo twist in there, but it's the only parent app that works with our Route Finder Plus solution. So we're extremely excited about that.
Awesome. I know very well our upcoming guest, Mr. Cain Smith at Sci-Fair. They've been a client, I believe, a long time of TransFinder. What's going on there? Are they in this first wave? Maybe they're chomping at the bit to work with you too on some of these new great products.
They sure are, and they've been clients for 19 years. Listen, that client went from a transition from our early product that really was, we just transitioned from a DOS to Windows. I mean, those are the old days. A lot of people out there don't even know what that DOS means. So we went from a Windows operating system, and these guys went from the early version. And my goodness, and I tell you, the whole team, and obviously we're blessed to have a client like Sci-Fair, and I can't wait to hear how Cain is really solving today's problem. They're very large operation. They transport so many students based on their size of a district that they have a lot of technology. They have a lot of struggle like everyone else does. And of course, it's all about leadership. There's amazing leaders at this district that really have to make decisions. And I always talk about this. It's about information and make sure it's accurate. And leaders mean sometimes you just have to make a decision and that's it. But this is a large school district that has tons of technology and they need it. And these guys love it. They really love technology. And this is really, we've been a great partner of theirs for 19 years. I can't believe it. So thank you, guys.
Yeah, exciting stuff from Tony Civitella at TransFinder. Coming up next, we got Cain Smith and Ryan Gray talking school restart. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, listeners. So we are very happy to have Cain Smith with us. He is the Director of Transportation for Cypress Fairbanks ISD in Texas, the third largest school district in the state and the largest student transporter. 1,200 buses, over 1,300 employees. Thanks for being with us, Cain. It's great to have you.
Well, thank you for having me.
I want to start off some of my questioning on a positive note, because obviously we'll get into the nitty gritty here of all the unknowns. But, I've noticed that the district has turned to some videos recently on YouTube during these closures to recognize your transportation staff as well as the district's graduating seniors. How did that come about?
Well, we actually did all those videos internally in our department. I'll be honest, it wasn't my idea. It was my team's idea. They brought to me an idea of first making a video for our staff, for our 1,300 employees, just to let them know that we miss them, we're thinking of them, we're hoping everybody is staying safe and healthy. And that video we put out probably about 2 weeks ago. And it was a huge success. Our drivers, our attendants, technicians, they all got involved in it. Everybody who's working right now played a role in it. And we have an online video training platform that we're able to upload videos that we create. So we uploaded that one without our staff that's teleworking right now, knowing that we were doing that. So it was, I think, a nice little surprise for them. And that got such great reviews that we came up with the idea of doing something to our students. We have about 118,000 students in Cy-Fair, and we thought about, what would it look like if we had something for our drivers, our attendants, to just send a message to our students that we're thinking of them, we miss them, we hope they're okay. So we sent out an email to all employees, and the feedback was absolutely remarkable. We had employees making signs, doing little videos, and we were able to compile a lot of that into a video and send it out via the district's Facebook page and our Twitter account. And I don't know if, over 10,000 views is necessarily going viral, but the response to that was amazing. And we're definitely going to be planning some more.
That's great. Yeah, I think some of our readers and listeners can head over to our Facebook page. I think we shared some of those, so you can check those out. So you mentioned that, from a professional development standpoint, you guys are using video right now to reach out to those staff who are telecommuting, who aren't in driving buses to deliver school supplies or Wi-Fi.
That's correct. We actually acquired this program, I'd say probably about 6 months ago. And, one of the things that we always had concern about was, just the use of technology for our staff. We've, instituted emails for all employees across the board, but we've never really used it. So we were fortunate in the fact that when all this happened, we actually had a lot of tools already in place to prepare us for the teleworking option and for lines of communication to our employees, but we just hadn't used it before. So I was a little concerned as to how that was going to be received, but our employees have been extremely receptive of it. Of the 1,300 employees, I could count on one hand how many have fallen behind on their videos right now. They've been very appreciative of it. They've had good reviews of the videos that we've been providing to them. We can send out emails to let them know that videos are being uploaded. So the technology, they've embraced it. And in fact, a lot of the end of year forms that they are required to fill out prior to going out of school for the summer, we were able to do those through PDF or Google Docs and send those. And we've been getting great response in those getting returned to us. So if there's any silver lining to all of this, our staff has really embraced the use of technology. And it's been very exciting to see how they've been able to take that to the next level.
That's great. Now, with a lot of these transportation staff that are working remotely, obviously, quite a few, probably hundreds of school bus drivers are not actively working right now for you. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we actually published an article earlier this week looking at random drug testing amidst all these school closures. And we talked to a couple of testing experts who really sharing some concerns about some of the exemptions or extensions they're seeing from FMCSA. How are you able to manage a staff like you do when so many of them are away? And are you able to do random drug testing right now for the drivers who are driving for you? And what about when all the rest of them come back to work?
Well, we are using that online video platform to just reaffirm the importance and the understanding of the drug and alcohol policies and procedures that we have in place. Understanding that there may be exemptions in place for some of those testing protocols. But just reaffirming to them the knowledge and the understanding of just the basic drug and alcohol policies and procedures and the impacts of each thing. So we can continue to provide that training for them and continue providing those videos for them. The drivers that we have in right now, and we're running a staff of about 400 right now, and I'd say roughly about 200 of them are drivers. We are actually performing random drug and alcohol testing for those employees. So we do have that process ongoing.
Good. Okay, and I'm also aware, it sounds like Texas has issued some extensions on CDLs that are expiring, on medical examiner certificates. How are you managing that? I mean, I would imagine, when school busing does return, whenever that may be, you're going to have a flood of school bus drivers coming back. Are you anticipating a big backlog?
Unfortunately, we are. We're forecasting a backlog in a lot of areas, not just the DPS and CDL renewals, but also recertification and certification processes. For the large number of CDL drivers we have in the state of Texas, and I couldn't even tell you exactly how many there are, we only have 25 testing sites in the state of Texas for CDL. So we're fortunate to be a third-party tester. But for our license renewals, we're just keeping tabs on who is expiring and just making sure that we're going to proactively schedule. Because I'm sure that when DPS opens, it's going to be by appointments, or there's going to be some kind of social distancing effect in place where, we're already, pretty busy in our DPS offices. And I forecast that just being even worse when this is lifted. So we just have to proactively look at who's expiring and make sure that we send those people in at the right time. And if appointments are necessary, make sure that we get those appointments in. And we have good relationships with our local offices. So we're going to make sure to continue to communicate that with them. And they've been really good at working with us because we've had such a good relationship with them for so many years.
Okay, and that's the drivers that actually return. So we were talking a little bit earlier about the challenges just of competing now with everything else in our society being delivery, being transportation oriented, delivering food, TVs, whatever, things from Walgreens and Walmart. Can you talk a little bit about, what you're seeing, maybe some of your worries, and do you think that this situation is similar in respect to what we saw with the Great Recession in 2008, helping school bus driver and even mechanic shortages?
I've been asked that question and by multiple people, and I've warned everybody, do not anticipate this being the same as the '08 recession. This is something totally different. And Ryan, you've made the comment before about the unemployment benefits, and you're absolutely right with what you just commented on, is the fact that there's a plethora of driving opportunities or people out there right now, because we are now becoming more of a delivery focused society because of this pandemic. You can have your groceries delivered to you. You can have anything delivered to you almost now. So I think there's going to be a huge increase in the need for drivers across the board. And that competition is only going to get harder for us. We're going to have to be very forward thinking and very proactive in what we do. We're all facing driver shortages. We know that when the dust settles and whatever school looks like when we can return could possibly result in an increased need of drivers. And for a lot of us, we were already short. I can tell you that, we were pushing about 70 drivers short when we closed. So I know for Sci-Fair, we actually had a meeting today with our communications and marketing department to start putting out a lot of literature, social media campaign to let the community know that we are hiring. We saw an 8.4% increase in our district in unemployment claims 1st of May. So, we got to get the message out that we're hiring. We're going to continue to hire. We need to hire not only to fill the vacant spots that we have when we had a normal school year, but we need to be proactive and prepared to where we can meet the needs for the school, the district, and the community when students do return. We're not going to think or assume that just because we're going into a recession, it's going to be like an '08 and we get fully staffed. I really, truly believe this is going to be a different scenario.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot now. We're going to talk about money. I know one of your favorite topics. I saw some things earlier this week. The budget came out. The new budget came out for Sci-Fair. Can you talk a little bit about, they're projecting a deficit and amid all of the challenges you have, and I know that there's still relatively little guidance to go on to figure out how you're going to ramp up to meet the need. But can you talk a little bit about the budget, the lack of money, what you might need going forward to try to address everything under the sun?
Well, we're like most school districts. We're July 1 to June 30 fiscal year, and we start our budget conversations as early as October. So I had my preliminary 2020-2021 budget complete late December, first part of January, and submitted it. And then, of course, everything has happened. But our district has moved forward with a budget that has the assumption that we are back in school in August, has the assumption that every position in the district is filled, and that we are going to be educating students in the, I guess, quote, former normal way, however you want to phrase that, whatever it was before the pandemic, knowing and understanding that reality may not be there. So we've also included a $10 million line item budget for just unforeseen COVID-19 related cost, and whether that's, foggers, PPE, whatever that may be, any unrelated costs that we may not have budgeted for that is in direct response to the COVID-19 pandemic. But, we're fortunate, we're extremely fortunate to be a very fiscally conservative district. We have a very healthy fund balance. And even with a proposed budget that's going to result in about a $20+ million deficit, we have a healthy fund balance to where we would still have over 6 months of operating costs if we were to spend all of that money. And we've passed deficit budgets in the past, and we've always gave money back to the fund balance. So our CFO, our team feels very comfortable with what we've presented, and I think it was very proactive in thinking about just putting that simple $10 million in there and go ahead and preparing and planning for anything that may be unforeseen due to this pandemic.
Unforeseen as perhaps more school bus purchases? I mean, what's these physical distancing requirements looking like for this new normal of busing kids?
Well, we purchased buses through bonds, and we passed a bond in May of 2019. And that bond included roughly $44 million worth of school buses. So if I got that $44 million tomorrow, we know in reality, I won't have those buses for a long period of time, 12, 18 months. So I don't think any of us, have the ability to just go out and buy a whole bunch of brand new buses and have them on our fleet tomorrow. That $10 million is more focused on, we're printing a lot of instructional materials right now for students. That's what we're doing, is delivering instructional materials to students. We do about 8,000 door-to-door stops every week. If we were to continue in a virtual model or even a blended model for next school year, where we were having to still continue to print packets, that would be something that would come out of that $10 million. If, like I said, masks, gloves, personal protective equipment, foggers, more hand sanitizing stations, those kinds of things would be more of what that $10 million would be used for.
Gotcha. But has you and your team have been looking at some of the ramifications if, like you said, the new budget is assuming that everything is quote unquote normal, that school starts when it would normally start, that you're busing the same number of kids in the same manner. But have you looked at what it would reduce passenger capacity to on a school bus? What would that look like? What would that cost?
We have, and it's interesting because we went, kind of give you the background. We actually went on spring break. I believe it was March 9th. I believe that's the day that was our first day of spring break. And the week that last week we were in school, the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo was canceled, and that was our big moment where we realized that this is going to be serious. This is going to really impact us, and it's going to impact us in a great way. And I say that because if you're in Houston, if you're from the Houston area, if you know anything about the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, when that's canceled, it just got real. So we started proactively planning on what things would look like. So all the way back in March, we were starting to talk about what would different bell schedules look like? What would different busing models look like? What would it look like if we were running at 50% capacity with one student per bus? We already started getting the numbers that would increase our routes to about 1,200. What if we were to do 12 students per bus, 13 students per bus? That's going to increase our numbers up to 2,200. And we know that that's to provide the same level of service we're doing right now without any adjustments to scheduling. We know that's unrealistic. We don't have the buses to do it, and we obviously don't have the drivers to do it. So we were proactive on the transportation side to start presenting this information to let our administration know, our school leadership know, if we want to continue providing the same level of service, here's the resources we have available. Here's the parameters we can do it with. We're going to do whatever we can to get the students to school, but here's what we got, and here's how we can do it to make it happen.
And that's what it really comes down to, right? Communicate, because transportation, that's the professionals in, guess what? Transportation, and the decisions being made by policy makers, by legislators, they really need to know that information so that they're not painting the district or the community into the corner, right?
Absolutely. Communicate and collaborate. That's the biggest things. We transport 85,000 students per day, and we want to do whatever we can to continue that same level of service. And we communicate to our campuses, to our leadership. This is what it takes to do it with various multiple models that we've presented and that have been discussed. So we communicate very frequently. We have a task force. We're meeting constantly to share different ideas, share different thoughts as to, how to get students back to school, how to get them in the classroom, how to get them, in the bus to school, and all the different ramifications that can come, in the event that we do cut service. There's a lot of unforeseens there that we need to be cognizant of. If we do cut service, we transport nearly 80% of our students. Every single student in our district is eligible to ride a bus. I got high schools with 40 routes and, averaging 50 students, 45, 50 students per bus. Imagine how many cars that would be if we were to cut service, how much traffic would increase. So those are all the different things that we have to communicate and collaborate on in making a well-educated decision as to how we're going to move forward with this.
Mr. Cain Smith, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate having you on and sharing your leadership with us and your vision. Have a great day, and we'll talk soon.
All right. I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Ryan, that was an excellent interview with Cain. Lots of great information. I think the listeners can really take a lot of that and really let it percolate and consider what to do for their districts or their business and how to move forward with this new normal. Also, special thanks to Tony Civitella for joining us today on the podcast. TransFinder is a great partner of ours, and we appreciate them sponsoring the podcast. Also, our friends at Zonar for sponsoring our tech tip. I want you to be able to subscribe, stream, or download the School Transportation Nation podcast. You can go on Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. Really appreciate leaving those 5-star reviews as well. Want to thank everyone for joining us. Be sure to listen to the next podcast that comes out. Also, visit us on stnonline.com for coronavirus coverage, and stay safe and well. We'll see you next week.